I woke up at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning, walked to my bathroom, and looked in the mirror. My reflection looked back at me, and then I raised my right hand, and my reflection raised its right hand too. Not the left, the right, the same side as me, not mirrored. I lowered my hand. My reflection kept its hand raised. I stepped back. My reflection stepped forward. I screamed. My reflection smiled. Not my smile. Something that used my face to make a shape it had clearly been practicing and hadn't quite perfected yet. My name is Anna. I'm 27 years old, and I need to tell someone what has been happening to me because I have told two people in my life, my sister and my therapist, and neither of them believed me at first, and I am starting to understand why. But I am also starting to understand that not being believed does not make something untrue. So I'm telling you, it started 10 days ago, on a Monday morning. I am not a morning person. My alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and I move through the first 20 minutes of the day on autopilot. Bathroom, face wash, brush teeth. The motions so practiced they require no conscious thought. I have done this routine in this apartment for 2 years. It is as automatic as breathing, which is maybe why it took me a moment to process what I was seeing. I had reached for my face wash, a bottle on the shelf to the right of the sink, and my reflection had reached to the right as well. Now, mirrors reverse things. Left becomes right. I know this. Every person who has ever looked in a mirror knows this. When you raise your right hand, your reflection raises what appears to be its left, because the image is flipped horizontally. That is how mirrors work. That is physics. That is not what I mean. I mean that I reached to my right, and my reflection reached to its right. The same direction. Not mirrored. Copied. Like watching someone standing across from you reach in the same direction, rather than a mirror image of yourself. I froze. I put my hand back down at my side. My reflection put its hand back down. Normal. Mirrored correctly. I told myself I had imagined it. Half asleep. Brain not fully online. A momentary visual glitch in my own perception. I reached for the face wash again, carefully this time, watching my reflection closely. My reflection watched me back and did not move. I stood there with my arm extended toward the shelf, face wash in hand, watching my bathroom mirror show me a version of myself that was standing still with both arms at its sides, while the real me had one arm raised and extended. 5 seconds. 10. I counted. My reflection stood with its hands at its sides and looked at me with my own face and did not move. Then at about the 15-second mark, it raised its hand, the wrong hand, the same hand as mine, not mirrored, and pressed its palm flat against the inside of the mirror, against the glass. From the other side, I dropped the face wash and ran out of the bathroom. I spent that entire day at work in a state of dissociation so complete that my colleague asked 3 times if I was feeling well. I did not go back to the bathroom in my apartment until the following morning, and when I did, I stood in the doorway for a full minute before approaching the mirror. My reflection moved normally, perfectly. Every gesture matched.
Correctly mirrored, completely standard. I watched myself brush my teeth, and everything was exactly as it should be. And I almost managed to convince myself that Monday morning had been a sleep-deprived hallucination. Then I noticed something. My reflection was wearing my pajamas, the ones I had slept in, which I was still wearing. Blue cotton, small white star pattern, correct. But the collar was folded down on the same side as mine. A mirror should reverse that. A mirror should show my left folded collar as the reflection's right folded collar. That is how mirrors work. Both collars were folded on the same side. My reflection was not being mirrored. My reflection was being copied. I called my sister that evening. I described what I had seen as clearly and calmly as I could. She listened carefully, and then told me, gently, that extreme stress and sleep deprivation can cause perceptual disturbances, that the brain is pattern sensitive and sometimes imposes false patterns on ambiguous visual data, and that I should perhaps speak to someone. She was not wrong to say that. I know she was not wrong. I made an appointment with my therapist for the following week. In the meantime, I set up my phone on the bathroom shelf to record video during my morning routine. If something was happening that my brain wasn't manufacturing, a camera would see it. The next morning, I watched my reflection in the mirror, and it moved completely normally. Correctly mirrored. Nothing wrong. I picked up my phone at the end of my routine, feeling equal parts relieved and foolish, and watched the footage back.
On the footage, my reflection moved normally for the first 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Then for approximately 8 seconds, I was brushing my teeth on camera, the toothbrush moving, my head tilted slightly, completely routine. And in the mirror behind me, my reflection stood motionless, arms at sides, watching, not watching me, watching the camera. At the 7-second mark of those 8 seconds, my reflection, while I was still brushing my teeth and entirely unaware, tilted its head, slowly, just a few degrees to the right, the way a person tilts their head when they are curious about something they are examining the camera. At 8 seconds, it resumed moving normally, and I finished brushing my teeth and picked up my phone with no idea what had just been recorded behind me. I watched that footage 11 times. I sent it to my sister without explanation and asked her what she saw. She called me back 40 minutes later. Her voice was different from our last conversation. Quieter. She said, "Anna, your reflection stops moving." "I know," I said. A long pause. "And then it looks at your phone," she said. "I know," I said again. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. My therapist reviewed the footage at our appointment. She is a calm, rational, scientifically minded woman who has treated me for anxiety for 3 years and who I trust completely. She watched the footage twice, asked me several careful questions, and then said something I did not expect. She said she wanted to refer me to a colleague, a psychiatrist rather than a psychologist. She said this without her usual careful verbal cushioning. She said it quickly, professionally, with her eyes on her notepad rather than on me. I asked her directly, did she think I had filmed what it appeared I had filmed? She looked up from her notepad. She said, "I think the footage shows what the footage shows. I think there is an explanation. I am not able to tell you what that is." That was 1 week ago. Since then, I have covered every mirror in my apartment with sheets. I use the camera on my phone in selfie mode to check my appearance when I need to. I have not looked into an uncovered mirror in 7 days. But here is the thing that made me decide to share this today. The thing that moved me from frightened to something beyond frightened that I don't have a word for. 3 days ago, I was on a video call with my mother. We were just talking, the usual Sunday call, nothing significant. And at the end of the call, right before we hung up, my mother frowned slightly and leaned toward her screen. "Anna," she said, "is there someone standing behind you?" I turned around immediately. My apartment was empty, nothing behind me. When I turned back to the screen, my mother's expression had cleared. She said she must have been mistaken, a trick of the light. She laughed it off. I did not tell her about the mirrors. I did not tell her what I had seen. But after we hung up, I sat in my apartment and thought about what she had described. A shape behind me, something she had seen through her screen that I had turned to find nothing. My mother had been looking at me through a camera, through a screen, through glass, and she had seen something standing behind me. I am sitting in my apartment right now, with every mirror covered and every window darkened, and I am trying very hard not to think about whether reflective surfaces are the only way it can look out, or whether, after 10 days of watching me from behind the glass, it has found another way through. Don't look at your reflection for too long tonight, and if it ever stops moving, don't wait to see what it does next. New for AI Horror Story. Subscribe so you never miss one. Comment below. Would you cover every mirror in your home?